Hey everyone, my name's Justin Odisho, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a smooth zoom transition effect in Adobe Premiere Pro. So for this example, you can see I've got a few clips laid out on my timeline, and there's just a simple cut in between each one of them where one clip moves into the next. And that's where we're going to begin working to create our transition. So rather than applying effects onto each one of these ends and ends of these clips, I'm going to go to my Project Media bin, and I'm going to go to File, New, Adjustment Layer. This is going to create an empty adjustment layer in your Project Media bin, which you can drag on top of the clips to work in between both of them on one layer. So I'm going to squeeze the sides of this adjustment layer in just about a few frames on each side so I have enough room to work with. And I'm actually going to put another one right on top. So you should have two adjustment layers on top of the clip and in between them. Next, I'm going to take the first adjustment layer and I'm just going to squeeze the left side of it in until it starts exactly at the cut. It should snap right to it as long as your magnetic snap is on, which it should be by default. Now I have two adjustment layers and I'm going to begin applying some effects onto the first one to prepare for our zoom effect. So if I head over to the effects panel on the right hand side, the first thing you want to do is add a replicate filter. And you should find this under the stylized folder in the video effects. I'm just using the search bar to pull these up. So when I add the replicate onto the first adjustment layer, you'll see that it'll duplicate the clip. However, I want to duplicate it once more. So open up the effects control panel and under the replicate effect, turn the count up to 3. Now we have a border and then the middle frame for us to eventually zoom into. But we don't want all these sharp edges. We want everything to be nice and smooth. So we're going to have to add one more effect, and that's mirror. So I'm going to find mirror. You should find it under this distort effect. And I'm actually going to add this effect a few times, but I'll tell you why. So click and drag this effect onto that same first adjustment layer, and we're slowly going to make each corner disappear. So we're going to need 4 lines of symmetry there. So for the first one, you can see this line of symmetry, and I'll put it at 90 degrees. And then I'll move the reflection center. You have the X and Y. So I'll move the Y until the ends meet in the center. So you can see I've made this line disappear. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this mirror effect. I'm going to apply it once more, except this time instead of 90 degrees, I'm going to use negative 90 degrees. And that's going to give me an opposite line of symmetry. And I'm just going to pull it over until the top line disappears. So now I've removed all the vertical lines, and now I'm going to do the same thing with the horizontal lines. So I'm going to add this 2 more times. So once here, I'll move the reflection angle to 180, and then I'll just move the X all the way to the left, and you can see where that line meets and disappears. And then I'm going to add it the 4th and final time, this time using 360 degrees, and move the X reflection center over until those edges meet. And you can use the up and down arrow keys to get exact precision. And then you should have a smooth center frame. So you can't really see where it begins or ends, but we have that perfect smoothness for us to zoom into. So now we're done doing things to the first adjustment layer, and all we have left to do is create the zoom. So now we're going to work on the top adjustment layer, and we're going to head over to the effects panel and find one called transform. So it should be under the distort folder. And let's click and drag that onto the top adjustment layer. This is how we're going to get that smooth motion blur and zoom at the same time. So for the zoom effect, we're actually only going to need to create 2 keyframes. So I'm going to start at the center of the cut, and then I'm going to move left about 6 keyframes or so. So for the left keyframe, this is the start of the zoom. I'm going to head over to the scale parameter, and I'm click this little stopwatch icon to toggle animation and keyframes. And that's automatically going to create 1 keyframe here, which is at 100 or the normal scale. Then we're going to go back to the center, and then I'm going to move 6 keyframes to the right because that's what I moved to the left. And then we're going to turn the scale all the way up to 300. And what that's going to do is it's going to zoom all the way back in on our center tile, since we initially divided it into a grid of 3, and now we're zooming back in on it 300%. So next, in order to get the motion blur, simply uncheck this box here that says use compositions shutter angle, and then turn the shutter angle all the way up. 360 degrees is going to give you the strongest amount of blur in between your keyframes. But if you want a lesser effect for some reason, then you can go down to something like 180. I like using 360 to get the maximum smooth blur. So in my example here, that was just a bit too slow for my taste, and before you can call the effect done, you should do just one more fine tuning of the timing. And we can do that by opening up the scale drop-down menu, and here you should be able to adjust the velocity of the effect. So what you want to do is make sure that the peak velocity is near the cuts of the frame. So if I click this velocity thing, I can pull these timers so that it starts off slowly and then ramps up to a higher speed. So if I pull both of the velocity sliders to create a bit of a mountain peak, and then I also move my keyframes inward or outward, I just want to make sure that that peak is hitting at the center of the cut. And by doing this, we create a bit more of an advanced or whoosh impact. So it slowly zooms up and then it zooms out quickly. So this is what that looks like. And I think that looks a lot smoother. But you can sit here and fine tune these and stretch things out, play around with them as much as you want. But those are the basics of the smooth zooming effect. From here, you can just highlight the two adjustment layers, Command C or right click and copy them, and then make sure your two tracks are only highlighted, not track one, and then paste them on, and you can know they're aligned by aligning the second one at the start of the cut. So there you can just paste the same effect onto each of the cuts that you want to use it on for the rest of your project, and you'll have that smooth zooming transition effect in between all of them. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, then definitely leave a like on it and tell me what you thought in the comments. I have more Premiere Pro transition effects in a playlist on my channel, so check those out. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for more effects coming soon. I want to make some more tutorials on how to make these things into presets so you can use them easier. And I might even put together all of my transition effects in my own type of preset pack. So subscribe for all that, stay tuned, and follow me on social media at JustinODShow on Twitter and Instagram to stay tuned for more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.